Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Bank on Her podcast. I'm so glad that you're listening. Today, we have part one of a two-part series podcast, and it is all about the sneaky ways, the 6 sneaky ways that you are falling short of being relentless. And I just want to dive right in. When I say relentless, here's how I really define it. I define it as someone who, no matter the setbacks, you are not going to settle. You're not going to give up. You are not going to give up on your dreams. You're going to be someone who does whatever it takes and operates with very high levels of self respect, self trust, and self belief so that you can make what you want happen. And I really like to talk about relentlessness in terms of two ways. I think it comes up a lot in terms of when you picture, and I know so much of my audience really likes this, when you picture being the kind of person where you're just like, I'm going to go create what I want. I'm going to go silently move and create everything that I'm wanting. And I'm going to turn heads doing it. Like, I am going to be the woman or the person who I say I want something and I go get it and it's no big deal. And it's it's not a problem at all. And I'm gonna make the money I want. I'm gonna have the body that I want. I'm gonna have that healthy relationship with my best friend that I want. I am going to have the bank accounts that I want. I'm gonna have the lifestyle that I want. I'm gonna have the confidence that I want. And I'm just gonna go after it. And I want to see how good it gets when I don't give up. That's kind of one person that is relentless. The other person that I really like to define it because I've played both roles personally in my journey is also the person who you'll make a comeback. It doesn't matter if you fall down. It doesn't matter if you struggle with mental health. It doesn't matter if shit has not been going your way. It doesn't matter if you haven't been who you want to be up until now. You're going to make it happen still. You're not going to quit. You're not going to give in. You're not going to give up. You're still going to make a comeback. You're going to be that comeback kid. You're going to be the underdog and you're still going to go after it and surprise everyone. Like, there are both parts of that. And when I am absolutely in my audacious confidence, I'm more of the person where people look at and they're like, how is she doing it? And I love that. But I've also been the person who I have really struggled with diagnosed depression in my life. And I've had to be the comeback kid. I've had to be the person who looks like they're down, who definitely feels down, and has to persevere and be resilient and have complete self mastery through it. And so I really look at relentlessness as complete self mastery, as this resilience, as levels of commitment that are just so enviable. And that's really being a relentless person. And I so often think it is the skill, it is a trait, it is the transformation that so many people are really craving and wanting, but don't know how to do. A lot of my audience, of my community, of maybe even you guys and my clients feel like they are so capable, they're so talented, they know they're different, they know they're made for more, but they also have these narratives of like, maybe I'm just not that disciplined, or maybe I can't do it, or I'm a reactive person, and they just have these narratives about themselves that keep them from being relentless. And that doesn't have to be the case. I actually think anyone can tap into relentlessness. And I think it's not so much about hard work or hustle or force or discipline, although that might be going on. I think it's so much more about when you are operating from your inner power with that self belief, self trust, self respect. That's when you're able to tap into a level of relentlessness because you are operating within integrity of who you're meant to be. And it's not just hustle, it's showing up for yourself every day, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't really want to do it. And it's that self-mastery, that emotional regulation, that very intentional action and commitment to your long-term goals, to who you want to be, to your desires, and where you know you're going. That is relentlessness. And when we think about why we maybe aren't tapped into that level of commitment and just being that kind of like machine who makes it happen for themselves, there's very apparent reasons. Like, you might not believe that you can do it, and you're lacking emotional regulation for it, and you are emotionally, or have your nervous system all dysregulated. You're lacking the self-trust or the self-worth, or you struggle to keep your word to yourself. Like, those are the very kind of like direct, obvious reasons that are going to be sitting in front of you. But there's also these 6 very sneaky behaviors that I have found in myself and also in my clients that have kept them from really tapping into the level of relentlessness that they want, that is needed to really succeed and achieve outside your comfort zone, outside your old identity, and outside the norm of what you've probably seen around you. The first one that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about three, is settling. Settling is often talked about, this idea of like, oh, I'm just accepting less than what I truly deserve or desire. And yeah, that one's a little obvious, but I think the way that I actually find settling to be a much more interesting conversation is when we talk about it in terms of how are your actions speaking volumes to the ways that you're settling. And a really good example that I've talked about in the past podcast, I think it's episode 50, maybe 51, it's around there, is that you'll decide you want something, but then the amount of time between when you decide you want it and actually doing something about it is really big. And in all that time, you've been settling. You've been actually negotiating and questioning with, can I do this? Can I actually go after it? What if, is this really what I want? Like all of that is very sneaky forms of settling. It's little things like saying it's fine or I'm fine when you're not. It is lowering your goals. So let's say you want to make, I don't know, $20,000 a month. And you're like, well, I'm actually just going to set it for like 15 right now. And the only reason you actually did that, if we dig in, is because you don't believe 20 is possible. That's settling. Or you might not be speaking up in your relationship as much as you want. All of those things, settling. Settling often comes from this fear that we will try and fail, or that we're not good enough, or it's a self-worth problem. So that's usually what's going on there. And the language of settling is usually good enough. I hear this a lot from women specifically, where they're like, I should just be more grateful for what I have. Like it's already good. I should just be more grateful for it. Or they'll talk about their relationship and they'll say a problem that they have with maybe their partner or their relationship, but they'll then be like, but he's really good about this. Like he's really good in this area. I'll hear people saying, maybe I'm wanting too much. I'm not sure that I'm ready for more, or like, can I even handle more? I'm worried that I can't actually handle more. So you'll settle for where you're at from that fear. Or maybe I don't have the capacity to handle this, or maybe I'm just not cut out for as much as I think. Or I, you're wanting more, but you're afraid to actually go after it. All of those things are settling. And I actually find settling is one of the forms that has come up the most for me in my journey, where I think I'm really pushing myself. I think I'm really doing it, but then I'm settling. And the way that I'll find this come up is that I'll set internal timelines for how long I think something will take. And my most recent example of this is that I was like, okay, and I'm not a runner. I don't run. I don't do it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to push myself. I really want to push myself. And I'm going to run a 5K in 6 weeks. I thought like, okay, yeah, you're pushing yourself. You're doing something new, right? And then I had a conversation with someone. They were like, oh, why don't you just do it in a week? It was actually my coach that said it. She was like, go do that in a week instead. And so I was like, okay. The first day of me trying to go run a 5K, I did it. And I was like, whoa, you were going to do this over 6 weeks and you did it in one attempt. That timeline came from a place of fearing that I couldn't do it shorter. And that's settling versus pushing myself, not just pushing myself to run, but pushing myself like, you can do more, you can do more, you can do more. And not from this place of neglecting your well-being. I could run just fine. It was more about the mental fears and pushing myself mentally. I'm not talking about the physical side, mentally. So the problem is not really why we're settling. Just name it. It's like you don't believe you can do more, or you're worried if you're worthy of more. But the problem that we really need to get on is catching where we're doing it. So it's like, where are you lowering your goals? Where are you telling yourself that it's going to take excessive time or energy or resources? Where are you backing down? Because settling is just you staying within your comfort zone when everything you want that you would get through being relentless is outside that comfort zone. And so I wrote down an audit for you guys to do. And so let me just pull it up really quick. So the audit is, what would I truly want if I wasn't concerned with whether or not it was realistic or possible? Make sure, listen to this podcast, obviously, watch this video, but go do this as well. Come back to it if you need to. So that's the first question. What would I truly want if I wasn't concerned with whether or not it was realistic or possible? The second question that I would ask is, how would I create it in a quarter of the time that I think it's going to create? And also in a way that's incredibly fun and within integrity for me. So if I just give you this running example, I do not want to run outside. I knew I couldn't run outside. Not that I couldn't, but that's thought. I did not want to run outside because I knew if I tried this 5K outside, like everyone suggests actually, that I would go slow. and that that it would take a really long time. Versus on the treadmill, I knew if you want to slow down, bitch, you got to press that button. And I knew I didn't need to press that button. And so I chose of like, if I'm going to do this 5K, instead of thinking it's going to take 6 weeks, I'm going to do it in a week. And really, I surprised myself with that day. But I was like, I'm going to do it on the treadmill where I know I can't coddle myself and slow down. And that was an integrity to me. Okay. And that was more fun for me, honestly. So that's an example. The third question is, what do I need to believe to make that happen? To actually go after it in a quarter of the time in a way that I really like. What do I need? And then your job, once you answer those three questions, is just to implement. Don't make it any harder. It's that easy. So that's number one, is settling. The second thing that is a very sneaky behavior, also have fallen into this one. I speak everything here from experience, is complacency. And I hit this one so honestly, it was the end of 2023. I'd hit into complacency. So I hit this really big milestone, both in terms of sales and in terms of cash. Like I was making more in that month than I had made in after like 3 promotions in corporate. I noticed how after that, I had associated with like, well, I've made it. I've done it. This is great. And I took my foot off the pedal and let some of the basics go when I should have. And I learned this lesson. I learned the lesson then that of complacency. Instead of just being like coasting and thinking I was good and like I've made it, that was the time when I actually probably needed to double down and do even more, be even more relentless, push myself even harder mentally again. And I got lazy during that time and I paid the price. I paid the price. It's the same thing where if you learn how to ride a bike, if you don't touch a bike for a couple of years, you're gonna be wobbly. Or I think in basketball terminology a lot now, and this is a terminology, but I think in basketball concepts a lot now because my boyfriend, he played professionally in Europe, and so whenever he coaches me, all of his examples are in basketball. So now mine are. If you are are shooting free throws, right? You're shooting them, you're gonna get really good. When you watch the NBA, they make them all the time. But if you stop shooting them after a while, you're not gonna have that same free throw percentage that you used to, right? Like whenever you don't use a skill, it's going to deteriorate. Whether it's the skill of confidence, the skill of relentlessness, the skill of cooking, like any of it, right? And you'll still retain like that baseline foundation, but a lot of it will go away. And my example of this with the biking is I remember one year my parents were like, you need to learn, if you want to come to Italy, you need to learn how to ride 60 miles a day. And I did. And I was great. I was really good at biking. And I haven't touched a bike in that capacity in years, years. But I bet if someone's like, go ride 60 miles, I could get 60. I would make it work. It wouldn't be as efficient though, but it's because my skill level isn't back to zero. If it was at 60, it's not back to zero, but it's probably somewhere around here, right? And I'd have to train it back up. The same thing, it's because of complacency. We stop doing things. The idea of complacency, of getting complacent with your skill set, with results, is usually very ego driven. It's often that if we've hit a certain milestone or a certain status or a certain point, we take our foot off the gas and start thinking, well, I've made it here, or I'm good at this enough now, and I don't need to focus on that anymore. Like you start to take your foot off the pedal with your skill set, with the amount of work you're putting in, with whatever it is, you will pay the price. And it'll often happen once we hit, a certain point, like I said, or receive a certain amount of validation, or we've built this reputation and then think we just get to coast with it. And you absolutely will for a period of time, but that will erode over time. And when we get into that, our focus tends to go off of growth and skill and evolution and more into reputation or maintenance or ego or proving. I actually see this happen a lot with even my own fitness journey is I'll get to a certain fitness point. I've done this a million times. I'll get to a certain, and I get to watch out for it now because I know I'll get to a certain fitness point and I'll be like, wow, I'm looking really good. Like, wow, I'm really impressed with where I am and I'm really proud of myself. And I'll be like, all right, I'm just going to maintain it now. And then I'll start adding in back, like going out a little bit more and drinking a little bit more and eating the New York pizza and bagels a little bit more. And all of a sudden, a lot of that progress is gone. It's because I got complacent. I took, not that I couldn't eat those foods, but I got a little too lax. And that's what happened. And so complacency is something that will really block you becoming relentless and becoming the kind of person who creates everything that you want. And the thing that I'll say is that your results will always, always tell you when you're getting complacent. Your results are not going to lie. Even if you think you've not gotten complacent, your results are going to tell you the truth. So that's where I would look for complacency is like if my income, my health, my fitness, my relationship, my bank account, whatever it is, hasn't grown as much as I want, or it's showing signs, if we take confidence, my confidence is showing signs that, I've not been working on this. Where is there complacency? Where have you maybe thought that, okay, I made it, I don't have to do this anymore, and taken your foot off the gas more than you needed to? The third one is self-protection. This is a huge one. It's very kind of all encompassing. It shows up in so many different ways that I'm going to talk about that too. I am pretty kind of like straightforward with my clients, and I'll ask them sometimes something like, if it's one or the other, are you acting more and pursuing your goals more from a place of self-protection or a place of self-belief? If it just has to be one or the other, which is it? Oftentimes we will be pursuing a goal, but doing it within the confines of our comfort zone. Something that I get with a lot of clients is they'll come to me very successful, these very successful female founders, these very successful corporate women, these very successful people, but they've done it all within their little comfort zone box. And they finally get to the point where they're like, I am craving so much more and it's terrifying. And like, I don't get it because I've done these big things, but like, I can't do those big things. And it's because they're succeeding within their comfort zone. They have pursued success with so long as it doesn't hit up against making them feel unsafe or too uncomfortable. And it's because they're taking action, but they're always making sure that they are having to protect themselves first. They're protecting themselves, which is fine. Like we always want to make sure we feel safe. That's a totally different thing. We always want to make sure we feel safe, but oftentimes it's just that they're not handling a level of discomfort that is probably needed to get to the next level. Versus when you're acting from a place of self-belief, you're going to believe in yourself and feel like you're capable and really have your own back and move through that discomfort like it's no problem. So when you are engaging in self-protection behaviors, it's often that you are doing things that keep you safe, but prevent you from really going bold towards what you really are wanting. So the ways this shows up, there's a bunch of different ways. You can kind of check yourself on any of these. A very obvious one is procrastination. So you will delay and avoid tasks, usually because you have fear of failure or that it's a certain challenge and just so uncomfortable that you put it off, put it off, put it off. That's you acting and choosing a behavior that's from a place of protecting yourself. Another one is perfectionism. You just think that everything has to be perfect or you have to be a certain level of good enough. And if it's not good enough, you're not going to get there. And you act from that place of perfectionism because you think it's somehow going to protect you from judgment, from criticism, from failure. Settling is a part of this. We already talked about it. Settling is a form of self-protection. External validation is a really big one where you want others' approval. You want to be liked. You want to be chosen. You want to know that they're going to love you. You want to be told that you're doing a good job. You want people, and even in business, to hire you to make you feel like you're doing good work. And really, it's just you waiting for some form of validation because it feels safer to have that. Another one is playing small, playing within your comfort zone, kind of like you talked about. Excuses is one. Excuses is a way of self-protection. Or excuses doesn't mean you're lazy or you're unaware or anything like that. It's usually just fear that you are masking in a different form to create justification for why you can't go after what you really want simply because you're afraid. That's it. And then finally, just avoidance. Avoidance in itself is you avoiding something because you are trying to protect yourself because you're not sure you can handle doing that uncomfortable thing. When you are acting out of self-protection, it is often because you are not bolstering up your self-belief enough, your self-trust, your self-respect, that relentlessness. So you end up operating more from a place of staying within your comfort zone rather than really being committed to creating what you want and working through the regulation needed to make it happen. So if you have any of these first three, and the next three are going to come in the next episode, it doesn't make you bad. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean you're never going to hit your goals. Don't jump to shame on that. It's a complete waste of time. Instead, just use this to check yourself, check your behavior and be like, oh, okay, this is probably a reason why I'm not getting further. This is probably a reason that I'm not furthering my goals or I'm stagnating. And again, people do this all the time. It happens all the time. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just about auditing yourself and then changing that behavior. So rather than get defeated by it, look at where can I actually evolve here. If you love this episode, make sure to tune in for the next episode because we're going to go through 3 more things that are honestly, I think, even more sneaky and people miss all the time. So go through that. And then on September 16th, I have an offer that is coming that is literally going to solve all of these. We officially kick it off September 27th. I've not yet announced what it is. We already have some people in, which is really exciting. If you are wanting to really uplevel how committed you are, how much you respect yourself, how regulated you are, how easily you can go after and pursue your goals without being quick to quit, make sure you watch for September 16th and what is coming and being announced then. Thank you for listening, though. I absolutely love it. I love to hear what you guys have to think about it. So if you have thoughts, come DM me. If you have questions, come DM me on Instagram. And I would love, love, love if you could leave a review either on YouTube or where you listen to this podcast. It means so much. It does a lot for my business. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll catch you in the next episode.